Legislative topics.
I'm just going to back out of
You're
the
going to
room.
back out of this one? All right. I feel like we should be wearing a suit for this one, right?
Right.
Let's be as stuffy as we can.
Yeah, there we go.
The state legislature has really gotten involved with associations
Yes.
over the last few years. And
Yep.
it's becoming really kind of a talking point now. There's just three that I want to touch on today about how the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act, MCIOA, how it's kind of gotten involved with associations when it comes to maintenance.
Yes.
So the first bit to be aware of with MCIOA, which is a refresher for everybody, is any association built after June 1st of 1994, all condos regardless of when they were built.
Yep.
But townhomes built after that date, unless they opted in a sense.
Right.
If an older one opted in, right? So one of the amendments to MCIOA that came in 2012 was the replacement reserve fund component, right? So in 2012, MCIOA said that an association has to have a separate fund to save for the capital expenditures of their association, for all the things that they're responsible for replacing.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. They have to have a separate fund that the board has to identify all the things that the association is responsible for replacing, and then adequately fund that fund.
Yes.
Which is like the most subjective word in the world.
Right. Yeah.
Adequately fund that fund for all of those replacements over a 30-year period.
Yep.
And then they have to review that plan every 3 years. So it doesn't say that they have to have a reserve study,
Right.
but a reserve study accomplishes those things.
It
right?
does. Yeah.
Yep. So that was the major legislative change to MCIOA in 2012, was kind of forcing associations to have a reserve fund, to be looking at all their stuff and planning for it and funding it. And I mean, essentially it was the legislature's way of saying, hey, associations, you better be physically responsible for all these things that you have to replace.
Yeah.
That was what happened in 2012. So fast forward 8 years, 2020, the legislature looked at MCIOA again and said, okay, we dealt with the replacement of things. We haven't really looked at the maintenance of things. So there was another amendment to MCIOA that said you had to have some sort of a preventative maintenance plan, a PMP.
PMP. Yep.
PMP,
Yep.
that's right.
You hear us talking about PMPs. That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about,
Yep.
right? So this kind of forced associations not to think about the replacement of things, but to make sure you're maintaining things. Interesting side bit about this one that we don't have to go into, but that amendment mostly came from lobbyists, from developers and builders that wanted to put the onus on the association
To maintain the stuff they built.
so that they can come back after them. Right?
Yep. Yeah, I believe that.
Yep. That was the impetus of where it came from.
Yeah.
But that amendment essentially said that the association needs to look at everything they're responsible for maintaining and have a plan
Yep.
to maintain them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really all it said.
It's-
you interpret that as you will.
Yeah, it's pretty open. I mean, it's but it's important. I mean, regardless of, how it came to be, preventative maintenance is a huge thing, right?
Right.
Extending the lifespan on components is huge for an association. That can come in the form of, I'll use roofs as an example.
Okay.
So I have several buildings that have flat roofs. So flat roofs with, EPDM and ballasted roofs and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
So I do annual inspections on those with many different roofing vendors.
Sure.
And each year they come back with a list of, things that they recommend that we do, and then they give the roof a grade. By doing that, we've taken a roof that when a reserve study was done in 2019 and they said, you're going to need to replace this in 2024. We did a roof inspection this year. They gave the roof an overall grade and they said, you're not going to need to replace this until 2028.
Okay. So then you could adjust your reserve study
Exactly.
accordingly. Right?
Yeah. So we spent maybe 10 grand to do these repairs, but we got 4 years of life out of the roof.
Sure.
That equals like $60,000 per year.
Right.
Not per year, but over the course of that extra 4 years.
Yep.
I mean, you're in the green so quickly.
Sure.
So, I mean, you apply that to every other major component at your building and I mean, in good shape.
That's great examples.
Yeah.
I mean, that it is so, the language in that amendment is so vague. And what's hilarious, you probably experienced this yourself, is all managers were like scrambling, associations were scrambling when this requirement came out. I think it was announced in like 2018.
Yeah.
It went into effect in late 19 and 2020 essentially. But and what was hilarious is that even attorneys, like you would get one attorney that said, you know, in association, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
and one attorney would say, you got to be really detailed. You need to
Right.
identify all the components, and then you need to give it like a reserve study, give it a lifespan and how much money that you need to save for the caulking of windows or the painting of doors or whatever. You need to save all this money, and then you need to sign off on a policy that says that you're in compliance. But then you ask another attorney, and they'll tell you the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And they would say, no, you should be as vague as possible.
Yep.
Don't identify things, because then if you do, then you're really locked into it. So I mean, the best answer is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah,
You just kind of have to navigate case by case. And I mean, you gave a great example of the.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what you're trying to accomplish is, you know, maintaining association components, right? So if you're doing that, that's good.
So we talked about those two amendments that, again, 2012 is really the replacement. 2020 is really maintenance.
Yep.
What we're looking to in the future, if we had a crystal ball here, there's not any policies currently right now in, what are we, December of 2022?
Yep.
There's no current policies at the state legislature right now, but I think there will be. And this really relates to what happened in Surfside, Florida last summer. And it's really going to dictate where associations go in their maintenance and ensuring that maintenance and inspections are happening. I know that the Community Association Institute is spending a lot of money lobbying each chapter throughout. Each state has a chapter to really work with their state legislators to incorporate some kind of a language into their version of what we have as MCIOA.
Yeah.
That will just really hold boards even more accountable to ensuring these maintenance things happen.
Yeah.
It's a reactionary thing, of course, but obviously what happened at Surfside was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson for our industry. So it will be interesting to see how MCIOA might be amended for a third time in the coming years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
always something to change MCIOA, and just our industry is fluid, right? Associations are fluid.
Yeah, it changes, but it's changing in a positive direction.
I think so too.
They're not doing this for nothing. So.
Right.